From 1996 to 2002, Alice in Chains frontman Layne Staley lived a pretty reclusive life. If you've read either Grunge is Dead or Everybody Loves Our Town, there's a handful of pretty depressing stories of what Layne was like in his reclusive years and how his appearance had drastically changed from years of drug abuse. It was during this time, especially towards the tail end of his life, that several of his musician friends and bandmates tried to help him get clean. That's what we're going to explore in today's video. It was either around 1999 or 2000 that Bob Forrest and John Frusciante tried to help convince Layne Staley to get off drugs. Forrest would be best known for his work in the Los Angeles bands Thelonious Monster and The Bicycle Thief. Forrest, who dealt with addiction, previously became known as a person who could get through to addicts, and Staley's mom asked him for his help. Forrest would recount the story in his book Running with Monsters, a memoir. Also with him during this time was Red Hot Chili Peppers' John Frusciante, who was newly sober, but he didn't think he could get through to Staley, but joined Forrest anyways in visiting Layne in his apartment in Seattle. Forrest would write in his book how the conversation went, going, "Hey Layne, what's going on?" To which Layne responded, "Nothing, I know why you're here." To which Bob responded, "Your mom's worried, man, you don't look too good." Layne would respond, "I'm okay though, really." After leaving Layne's apartment, Forrest would remark to Frusciante in his book, "I don't think he'll come out of this," to which Frusciante responded, "It's his life, man." Former Screaming Trees frontman Mark Lanegan would talk to Rolling Stone in 2020 and discuss getting sober in the late 90s and trying to help his friend Layne Staley. He would tell Rolling Stone, "The first time I saw him referring to Layne after I gotten clean, I've been clean a year. I'm pretty sure that Alice in Chains, Jerry Cantrell, and Mike Inez flew me up to Seattle because they were unable to get into his house. He had a camera and lived in the penthouse of this condo, so whenever anybody from his camp would come to see him, he would just ignore it. Jerry and Mike knew that when he saw me, he would let me in. And I also wanted him to see that I was clean, that it was possible to get clean, that his prediction that I would never be able to do it had failed. Hopefully maybe it would give him the idea that he himself could do it, but he didn't want to do it. When I got there, I said, 'Hey man, it's been a while. I've been clean for more than 12 months. And he was like, "No, you weren't, man. You just left like 2 months ago." His sense of time had warped and he wasn't buying the truth from me. I remember him saying at that point, "I always just keep thinking I'm going to get the same feeling I got the first time again." Lanegan would go on to say that he hoped a medical emergency would force Layne to change his ways, but that medical emergency ended up being his death. Finally, his bandmates, more specifically drummer Sean Kinney and Mike Inez, tried to help Layne, and Inez would reveal in the book how he himself and Mark Lanegan would go beat on his door to talk to Layne from time to time, but to no avail. Kinney, meanwhile, would tell an interviewer, "It got to a point where he kept himself so locked up both physically and emotionally. I kept trying to make contact 3 times a week like clockwork. I'd call him, but he'd never answer. Every time I was in the area, I was up in front of his place yelling for him. Even if he could get into his building, he wasn't going to open the door. You'd phone and he would never answer. You could just kick the door in and grab him, though there were so many times I thought about doing that. But if someone won't help themselves, what really can anyone else do?" Nirvana bassist Chris Novoselic would sometimes take food over to Layne's house, hoping to save the frontman after losing his friend Kurt Cobain. In the book Grunge is Dead, Krisha Agaro, who worked for Pearl Jam, singled out Alice in Chains' manager and Chris Cornell's wife at the time, Susan Silver, as being the person who tried to help Layne the most straighten out his life, recalling she was a constant in his life trying to get him clean. Unfortunately, he just never accepted it. Sadly, Layne would pass away on April 5, 2002, 8 years from the day Kurt Cobain died due to a drug overdose. His body wouldn't be discovered until 2 weeks later, after his accountants noticed that no cash withdrawals had been made from his account and no one had heard from him. If you guys have suggestions for future topics you'd like to see me cover, use the link in the description box below, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll Your Stories. Take care.